Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at the Thursday race of the day. It is race 7 at Aqueduct. This a first level allowance going the 6.5 furlong distance on the dirt. Before we handicap this race, do note you can head on over to the race of the day page on DRF.com and get free past performances for this race. Free all access past performances, meaning you can use Timeform US, Formulator, whatever you want to utilize to handicap along with us for this 7th race at Aqueduct. And Mike, we've got a field of 10 runners signed on, 9 betting interests, as there is a coupled entry in this race of the number 1 Crazy Mason and the number 1A Radio Red, the latter of which I think could pull in some support to this entry. But got to imagine that the number 7 Quick to Accuse is going to be the favorite. It just seems like the bettors can't get enough of these Brad Cox productions, and this one is coming in pretty good form.
Yeah, I agree with that. Brad Cox took over early last year with Quick to Accuse. To me, he clearly improved in the Brad Cox barn. It's nothing basically but good races since the trainer change. I don't know that I'd be dying to take a short price on it, but he's certainly a contender and here cutting back.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race to see where Quick to Accuse could be placed early along with some of the other speeds. And interesting that Fravors front runners flag is being triggered for this race, because you do go through the field and it's not like there's a ton of front running speed in here. I mean, the number 9 Prin TR is a horse that does do his best running when he's up on the pace, and you'd imagine he would be aggressively ridden from his outside post. But I think being outside does give his jockey Romero Mirage a few more options than he would have if he were drawn down towards the inside. And then you've got a bunch of horses that sort of want to be in the mix but don't necessarily need to be on the lead. Quick to Accuse would be among those.
I agree. I certainly feel like Prin TR's going to go forward, but like he's not a horse who they have to just sort of get ultra aggressive with here and try to clear. To me, I did sort of feel like pace projector has him right up there, the number 4 Air of Defiance. I just feel like this horse is going to get a more aggressive ride this time. He was stretching out to a mile for the first time in his most recent start. It didn't really seem like they had any designs of being part of that pace. And listen, I'm not going to defend his performance. He didn't run well in there, but he's got more speed than that. I think they'll use it this time.
Yeah, and the number 5, Light the Way, lost the jockey at the start last time, so we could see a little more early speed from him. So maybe there is some potential for this pace to heat up a little bit if those horses engage each other on the front end. Let's take a look at this field in program number order, beginning with that coupled entry, the number 1 Crazy Mason, a horse who came off the layoff last time for trainer Greg Sacco, and so in a race the 3 of these are exiting, and was sort of in there in a blanket finish for second behind the winner, Stolen Magic. Got a pretty wide trip around the far turn and stayed on okay to just miss getting up for second and third that day. I guess he's got some upside second off the layoff here, but he would need to improve, and he's going to have to find some pace ahead of him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also he's part of the entry, and he seems like the weaker part of the entry, which just makes him, really hard to want to bet in here, because as you've already sort of mentioned in the open, Radio Red, the other half, is probably going to pull money into this. So even if you like Crazy Mason, and I do think there are things to like about him, you're going to take the worst of it from the wagering perspective.
Yeah, his entry mate, Radio Red, the 1A, could have been the favorite in this race, and he might still be. I mean, if bettors were able to ignore his last performance, where he was pretty dreadful up at Saratoga. I mean, just never was really involved that day, went backwards at the quarter pole and was basically eased to the wire. Something apparently went wrong because he's been off since then. But you go back to his prior form, both at this level and when he was facing New York breds, and he's run nothing but speed figures to make him competitive in here. And it's not like he hasn't bounced back from poor efforts before. So maybe we don't have to be that concerned now that he's had this freshening and is returning for trainer Danny Gargan, who does do very well coming off layoffs. And this horse shows a bullet work coming into this.
Yeah, and he's also a horse, he can close if this pace gets fast, but he's no plotter. If the pace really doesn't develop strong in front of him, he'll be right up close, and I think in a pretty good spot. You'll be hard-pressed to find a horse. He doesn't win that often, David, and I don't like that about him, but you'll be hard-pressed if you go back through a lot of these losses to find a horse who lands in races that are one wire to wire in front of him. I mean, it happened to him so many times between the end of 2023 and into early 2024. I don't know, man. His last race was bad. I can see being lenient. I do want to wait and see what kind of price he is, though, because he's just not the kind of horse I'd take a short price on.
Jumping down to the rail, the number 2 is Laser Sharp. He is coming off a victory when he returned from a layoff at the starter allowance level last time for trainer John Terranova and did improve a little bit on the form from early in his 3-year-old season to get the job done that day. He sort of forged to the lead in upper stretch and just had enough to hold on late over the late charging forward move. This horse is going to have to run a little bit better than that, but Terranova has very good stats both off layoffs and even better stats second off the layoff when you look those up in Formulator, especially on dirt off a second off 150 to 300 day layoff. He's 8 for 19 with a $3.79 ROI. So he's got stats to improve. This horse is going to have to do so, though.
He's going to have to move forward. I'm a fan of this horse. I'm not sure that if this is the spot for him, but listen, I liked each of. He didn't win any of his first 3 starts to begin his career. I thought he ran well in all of them before he finally broke his maiden in that most recent dirt start. They tried turf back in May. Who cares about that? He ran well up the layoff last time. It wasn't, a super impressive performance, but he had good tactical speed. He took over easily. He held on. He had a right to need that start anyway. He can move forward here. I really do believe that, but he's going to have to.
The number 3 is Shipsational. He is coming out of a common race that 3 of these exit in late November. And we'll take a look at the stretch run of that affair, where he is the horse that was sort of last turning into the lane along the rail. He's going to cut the corner and try to angle to the outside of Prin TR, who was leading just in front of him. And he's going to work out a pretty good trip to angle out here into the clear and just get up for second behind the winner, Stolen Magic. I don't think this was the strongest race at the first level allowance condition. This is probably a better field that he's facing here, but at least it was a solid effort coming back off the layoff. He is a horse that has shown hints of talent along the way, but he struggled with winning races and having these breaks in his career, and you start to go back through his form and scroll down, and the last time he won a race was all the way back during his 2-year-old season. He's now a 6-year-old.
Yeah, I every time I see this horse in the entries, I can't believe that he's 3 for 21, considering how good he's a New York bred, but considering how good this horse was as a 2-year-old, winning 3 of his 4 starts, an 88 buyer, winning the Sleepy Hollow as a 2-year-old, and he hasn't won a race since that. I mean, he's run well at times. There have been a couple of layoffs, but for whatever reason, David, it hasn't happened for Shipsational. I thought he ran fine last time. I don't necessarily want to bet him back here against what I think is a tougher field.
Number 4 is Heir of Defiance, a horse who showed a lot of promise as a 2-year-old. Speaking of good 2-year-old form, I mean, he was a horse that was generating some Kentucky Derby trail chatter when he broke his maiden back in October of 2023 by 6 lengths at Keeneland. He had also shown promise on debut when he finished second to the eventual champion Fierceness. Something obviously went badly awry with him. He missed a year of action and returned not in the Brad Cox stable that he had been in, but for Chad Summers, and just hasn't really gotten back to that brilliance that he showed as a 2-year-old. But when you do start to pick his last 2 races apart, Mike, he was involved in an extremely fast pace 2 back off the layoff. And, you mentioned his last race not getting the most aggressive ride. Maybe it'll be different tactics here.
Yeah, I just thought that they're putting blinkers on here. I feel like it's almost for certain that they'll be more aggressive with him. I understand why maybe they wanted to rate him a little bit trying the mile last time. And, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. I'm not going to defend that performance because he didn't run well, but maybe he just got the wrong ride in there. You're 100% correct about the first start back, the first start for Chad. Not only was that a wicked pace, it was also a really good field. The winner of that race is a very, very good horse. I liked this horse's. I know it was a different barn. I know it was a long time ago. I liked his maiden win quite a bit. This horse looked good winning that race in fast time. I think it's way too early to give up on this horse.
The number 5 is Light the Way. He was in a race that actually Quick to Accuse is exiting, the morning line favorite, but never really got to participate that day. He stumbled out of the gate, lost the rider, lost his bridle, just a total disaster at the start. The problem is you go back to his form prior to that, and it's just kind of hard to find the race that makes him competitive in here. He tried this condition a couple of times at Parks against weaker fields, wasn't really competitive. A horse who's got a nice pedigree, just has never really lived up to it.
Yeah, it just hasn't run a race that's going to make him all that competitive against this field. I didn't think anyway, David. He also wants to be forward, and I just don't see him making the lead and beating this field.
The number 6 is Beaver State, and he's a horse that's coming in here in great form right now. He's a nose shy of having won 3 races in a row. A horse that began his career at Ellis Park, came into form at Laurel, and he's taken his show to Aqueduct recently and was really game in defeat too back at the starter allowance level. Looked like he was going to get swallowed up in mid-stretch, kept fighting on to lose by a nose. And here we're taking a look at his most recent race when he won that starter allowance condition, just sort of ranged up on the outside, was able to run away from this field late. A pretty commanding performance from this horse who just keeps improving his Beyer speed figures with every start. He's going to have to take another step forward to beat this group, but I don't want to be too hard on a horse who's in good form right now.
Yeah, I don't either, especially for this trainer. It's a very underrated trainer he goes for. So this horse, you could tell that race that we just watched, that you could tell he was going to win that thing from the backstretch. He was just always traveling, took over at will, improved slightly. Again, this is a way tougher field than that one, but I like each of his last 3 races. I like all of them.
The number 7 is Quick to Accuse, who I did peg as that 2-1 morning line favorite. We'll take a look at his most recent race when he finished second at this level to a horse who's just in razor sharp form right now in Treaty Obligation. He's a horse that was winning 3 in a row for Linda Rice. And you could see Quick to Accuse kind of briefly gets to the front here, but he just can't hold off the late charge of that eventual winner, but does battle that foe all the way to the wire to only lose this race by a length. This was going a mile. I don't really mind him turning back to the 6.5 here. He's a horse who put forth an explosive performance to win, going just a tad farther than this at 7 furlongs when he came first off that trainer switch to Brad Cox back in the spring of last season. And, he's put in one poor performance for this barn at Saratoga, which was followed by a layoff. But other than that, he's just been doing well. The only problem is you got to swallow a short price for this stable.
Yeah, and I don't know that I'd be willing to take another short price on David, but I'm not knocking him because again, I think he really improved when Brad Cox took over. The one poor performance you noted at Saratoga, he stumbled badly at the start of that race behind General Partner, and he's run well, and he hasn't won either of the last 2. He ran well both times, and like you, I just don't mind him cutting back. There's a lot to like here.
The number 8 is Sho Ridge, who's a bit of a wild card coming into this race because we haven't seen him in nearly a year, since February of 2024. And he's a horse who has had a couple of long layoffs in his running lines. He showed talent in his second start, getting that 88 Beyer in a very fast maiden event up at Saratoga. Came off a bit of a freshening, broke his maiden after that, and ran fine in a couple of starts at this level, but then went to the sidelines for so long. Bill Mott has decent numbers bringing horses back off layoffs like this. What I don't like, Mike, is taking a look at his work tab coming into this race. It feels like he missed 2 months of workouts between October and December, and that just doesn't feel like a great sign for a horse who's been away for this long.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it just feels like if nothing else, it just means he's definitely going to need one off the layoff here as they come back sprinting. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that he needs longer distances to be better, because I do think he can sprint, and he's run a race or 2 that makes him interesting in here at what should be a fair price. I didn't really want to bet him against this field.
The number 9 is Prin TR, and we took a look at the pace projector earlier. He's a horse who does want to be towards the front end, whether he's out there alone outright or battling for it. I think both situations are just okay, just fine for him. He's drawn on the far outside post position, which should give Romero Mirage some options here. And last time out, he was aggressively ridden to make the front over Rudy Rodriguez, uncoupled stablemate, who also seemed like he was getting an aggressive ride that day and sort of forced Prin TR to go a little faster to the quarter than maybe the jockey would have liked. And he got challenged in mid-stretch and briefly looked like he was going to fold up and not really be in the trifecta at the end, but like he often does, he battled on all the way to the wire, almost held on for second that day. It seemed like he had kind of lost his form 2 and 3 back, didn't make the lead, or just lost some of his speed in the last couple of races, but got back to it last time. I like the draw here and just feels like he's landing in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, listen, I am in no position to knock this horse. I do think this race is tough for him, but only if some of the more lightly raced horses actually do move forward, which they're going to have to do in here. And then you also have a couple of major contenders who are off of layoffs. That's something that Prin TR doesn't have to deal with. It's really kind of amazing what Rudy's done with this horse. Claimed him 2 summers ago at Saratoga out of a win, and just every single race since then has been a really good performance from this horse, who is perfectly drawn outside the stalk to pace if he has to. I do think this is a tough race for him, but he's a really good horse.
One thing I did notice about Prin TR is that Rudy Rodriguez applied an extension blinker 3 starts ago, and that seemed to really take away some of his speed, or maybe that just happened in coincidence with that. And then last time, he has the extension blinker on the right side, and it's almost like he didn't see those horses that were flying up on the outside until it was too late. Now drawn outside, maybe that extension blinker will work a little better for Prin Track. And as we throw up our picks for this race, you can see I'm hoping that is the case because I did put Prin Track on top. I just like the expected pace scenario for him in this spot. I think he's going to get the aggressive ride that he needs from Romero, who knows him very well, and hoping that he is a decent price. I pegged him at 5-1 on the morning line. But Mike, you went for an even bigger price with the number 4, Air of Defiance.
Yeah, he's just a horse. I do think there's something there with him. And I again, I think they're going to get a little more aggressive here as he cuts back to sprint again after, the rating didn't work out going the mile last time. He's going to have to prove it out there. This is not an easy spot for him, but I think there's something there with him, David. I want to take a shot here at a price. We both put Radio Red second. I'm not going to be surprised when he wins. I just didn't necessarily want him if he's going to be the favorite here.
Yeah, both Mike and I do like horses that should be forwardly placed in this Thursday race of the day, race 7 at Aqueduct. Good luck if you're playing the races later this week.